Let's hear from Dismas. Even with all this, talk of how we can be able to improve the economy and how the government can move forward in, making things better, it appears though we're still, in a deadlock, in a stalemate, when we have this bipartisan talks that are, ongoing, are yet to begin, and very headline stances still from the political divide. Because if there is really no resolution, you have the Azimio team back on the streets, and that really hurts the entire thing.
That letter confirms the worst fears of many citizens, partners, and stakeholders that, in fact, Azimio was not very keen on the issues they raised, the issues they wanted addressed.
How? They've already listed.
No, they've listed a number of issues that they wanted addressed, and the powerful political players in Kenya have said, let's have a conversation in a bipartisan manner. Let's have our elected leaders have a roundtable meeting in a bipartisan conversation and address the issues. But even before the talks, begin, one party says, let me go back to the streets to have conversations. In my view, what Azimio and Kenya Kwanza ought to be doing today is having conversations before the main talks so that they set out the agenda. Because what Murai is looking for today is not who is right or who is wrong. They want somebody who can address food inflation, somebody to address the cost of fuel, somebody to guarantee Kenya political stability. They are not very interested in these sideshows that put Kenya in an election mode.
But is it sideshows? Look, the Azimio team yesterday said they were being taken for a ride. Why? Because you have one of the members that have been named to be part of that panel from the Kenya Kwanza team is a Jubilee elected member of parliament who's Aidan Kainan, right? He sits in parliament because he was elected under the Azimio team, right? So what they're saying is Azimio has a proposal to amend the constitution to buy elected leaders from party hopping after election. But if this is happening, they're saying they're being taken for a ride. So then are we going to have an honest conversation?
That is a clear indication that Azimio doesn't even want these conversations to begin. Because if you don't want the conversation to begin, you start by addressing subsidiary issues. And we've got the legal framework. If there's a member of a political party and the party thinks that they have erred, they've made mistakes, there's a clear process of kicking them. You can actually expel members from a political party. And we've seen people going all the way through the tribunals, going all the way to the Supreme Court. But let's address the main issues, because I think my colleague panelists have raised a number of issues in this conversation, and it would be unfair to let them just go unattended. Number one, investors have not refused to give the government resources. They are sitting back, praying and hoping for high interest rates. So they're seated, waiting for a moment to be given a better offer. That is number one. Number two, what is the definition of leadership? When you run for election and you become the president of a nation, or rather when you're running for political office, you present your manifesto, and the voters will take a position and accept a proposal. So the majority of Kenyan voters said we are buying the Kenya Kwanza proposal. That is what they vote. So expecting Kenya Kwanza to implement an Azimio proposal again is going on the extreme end. Can the people who lost the election sit back and give Kenya Kwanza the opportunity to execute the plan? Because, when you are saying that one of the things you want addressed is for the Kenya Kwanza administration to offer subsidies for consumption, while in fact Kenya Kwanza won and said that we are going to offer subsidies in production. So essentially you are saying, can you abandon your plan and implement our proposal? That doesn't work. Kenyans went to the polls, elected 1,930 persons. We gave them power to represent us as MCAs, members of the Senate, National Assembly, governors, and the presidency. These are the people we have given responsibility to take decisions for us for the next 5 years. Can we allow them to head this bipartisan team so that they make sure that they drive our national and public interest? These things are really the bare minimum. But when you introduce all these other things, it means that there's some sort of deceit. And then there's the issue about the cost of living. This cost of living is not limited to Kenya. It's a global thing. You cannot blame Kenya Kwanza for the high cost of living here, because even our neighbors are experiencing the same thing, and it's a global thing. Now, for the factors that Kenya Kwanza can control, they've demonstrated competence that in fact they're addressing them. They're addressing the food inflation, they're addressing the fuel, and they've come up with a supplementary bill, and in fact, in June, you're going to see their full budget. Now,
addressing it, but you have Kenyans concerned that they're not feeling the impact of some of these things they're addressing, economically speaking. Yeah,
it's because they're being pushed to a corner to imagine that a good cup of coffee or a good cup of tea can actually be instant. It does. You can't have, if you want to have a good coffee or you want to have a good tea, it cannot be instant. Where I come from in my village is something called omosike, which you are supposed to brew. And if you want to have a good tea or good coffee, it takes a while. But if you expect everything to be instant, then that is going to be voodoo. And then for the people who are saying that they want this process to be not limited to the National Assembly, then you ask yourself, or rather from Parliament, then you ask yourself, why did we go to the elections? Why did we elect these people? Why did we give them a mandate? So there's a lot of lies, there's a lot of deceit, there's a lot of misinformation and fake news surrounding this entire process. And when the key issue you're supposed to ask yourself, Zainabi, is, as Kenya Kwanza demonstrated competence and capacity to address the cost of living, are they addressing the elephant in the room? Let's look at, for instance, the conversations about retrenchment. Policy in Kenya is pronounced by the president, his deputy, and members of the cabinet. The president, his deputy, and members of the cabinet, nobody has said they are going to retrench any public servants. An advisor has said that that's one of the options that they may consider. But nobody has come up with something very definite that we are going to do retrenchment. And in any event, a president is supposed to ensure that he attracts, retains, and rewards top talent in the public sector so that they can drive the agenda. And that's part of the reason why we had that event yesterday, where the Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary has said any public servant who takes a decision that offends the Constitution will be penalized. That's why they said that any public servant who takes a decision which advances our national and public interest is going to be recognized and rewarded. That is the kind of human capital you need. Then you need to allocate financial resources to support those kind of endeavors. And in my view, as a nation, it matters not whether you're in Azimio, it matters not whether you are in Kenya Kwanza. What we must ask ourselves as a nation is are our leaders' selfish interests aligned to national and public interest? Because if we keep on throwing hardballs at each other, it's going to be 5 wasted years, and before you realize, Kenya is going to become the smallest economy in the region.
Okay.
We just completed elections last year, and instead of giving the Kenya Kwanza administration time to settle down and build the economy.
But they did promise a number of things within the first 100 days. Yeah. The Kenyans were asking, what happened? That's the question, right?
During the first 500 days, things that are required policy interventions that the president would sign into law, like for instance, the appointment of judges, that was done. When you're talking about, some policy interventions, those were done. But Kenya again is a constitution which respects the rule of law and order. For instance, if you want to constitute your administration, the names have to go to the National Assembly for vetting and approval, and because you respect the rule of law and order. In my view, every single person must support Kenya Kwanza, but the support must not be blind support. If you're in the opposition, we should be able, like in the UK, where you have a loyal opposition.
But that's not the spirit of democracy. When you say everyone must support Kenya Kwanza, right?
Because, if you do not, maybe you've taken it out of context. When I mean that everyone must support, I mean, if you're in the opposition, it's supposed to be loyal opposition, that you do not criticize the administration simply because it's a sport or you want to disrupt the activities.